Hey everybody, welcome back to Worship Perspectives. I'm Rob, with me is Jameson. This episode's really going to be a lot more focused on Jameson because this is more his wheelhouse of expertise. What we're going to be talking about today is we're going to be talking about organization, being organized, and the difference between organization and preparation, and just a couple of tools and tips and tricks on how to become better organized, and how to lead your team with having everything in place before they even get there, and things like that. This is, and like I said, with Jameson having been a worship leader for so many years, and me, I'm more in the musician role. I mean, I am a worship leader, but I'm more in the musician role on a day-to-day and week-to-week basis. So this is going to fall a little bit more heavily on him. So Jameson, let's get started unpacking
right
this.
into it.
What do you do to organize?
Well, let me back up first and talk about why it's such an essential piece of the equation. When you become a worship leader, or when you're a newly worship leader, one of the scariest things is picking the material every week, especially if it's 100% on you to do it, which I've never had it any other way. Every position I've ever held as worship leader, I was 100% responsible for picking all the music every week. So you pick the music. Well, it's a little more than just picking the songs. You need to decide, well, the songs are the most important, and then you decide the order, what key they're in, their speeds, and how they're going to flow throughout the service. Then you need to give that word to everyone that's going to be involved, and if you want your team to run at a high level, you need to give them all the tools that they need for that week, including charts, to a service called Planning Center. Now, everyone doesn't use Planning Center, but it's widely becoming the kind of the standard tool. Planning Center is a online service. It comes with free apps for your users. It's free for all your users to use. The church has to pay for it It's a monthly service, and it's based on how many people are using it. So if you have a small team, it's not going to be extraordinarily expensive. But if you have a very large rotating team, that's going to cost a little more. But on Planning Center, not only can you load all of your material, you can put all your chart. You enter a song, you put your lyrics on there, you put your chord charts. If it's in a key that's not conducive to acoustic guitar, then you put an alternative chart on there for like a capo copy. If you are working with professionals, you can use number charts and put them on there. The CCLI now offers number charts on all their songs, and that's where you can also attach. So I put this plan together, and I need Rob to play lead guitar. So I'm going to schedule him for this Sunday, February 5th, 10:45 a.m. is the worship service, 9 a.m. is the rehearsal, Wednesday at 7 p.m. is the other rehearsal. So I send all my plans out every week by Monday at lunch. Sometimes I do it Sunday afternoon. I do not plan more than 1 week at a time to my team, even if I have it planned in my head. That's just my personal rule. It's caused a lot of confusion in the past where you give too many plans out. So that is key one, I think, to having not showing up for rehearsal and kind of being, what are we going to do, and having to run and make a copy or something, is to have all that lined up, ready to use, and then when you get to rehearsal, also having all that ready. Don't assume that everyone's going to print their own copies and that kind of course, that's, your team is your team. You know who does what and who you need to provide for. If you don't do this, a couple of days. But if you play every week, you really kind of want that break. It's like, hey, let's get through worship, take a breath, and then look at next week's material.
Yeah, absolutely. And I work with a lot of these tools. I use Planning Center not from the worship leader perspective. I use Planning Center Services, which is, that's the musicians part of it. So when I come in, when I'm working with one of the teams that I play with, when I come in, I've got what key the song's going to be in. I've got a chord chart for it. I've got capo alternatives, which as a lead guitar player that plays by ear, I don't really use a lot of that. What I tend to use more is it also allows you to have like a MP3 or a WMA or a the music stand app, so that you can have your iPad over there on your microphone stand, and you can see what chords you're going to be playing. So it doesn't really help me much because mainly I play lead and I play by ear, so I just have to learn the songs, which I do mainly through like YouTube and things like that. So what that does, it gives me an opportunity to listen to the song as recorded by the people that I'm going to be playing with, and in the key that it's going to be played with, and I'll just put that on a Bluetooth speaker and just play along with it and learn my part that way.
Right. Well, outside of your weekly planning, long-term organization with worship planning, I don't typically wait until Sunday night or Monday morning to decide on the first song. I usually know, and I usually work a few weeks ahead in my own mind and in my own office. I just don't give the team that information until that week, unless it's a solo that may want some extra time, or a heavy guitar part that I think if my player might need more than a couple of days to work on, then I will make that jump. But I've used everything from old-fashioned spreadsheets to stay organized on what songs I've done, what songs I want to do, map things out for the future. I very much love to tie in as much with the scripture and sermon of that day. I like when the pastors say, "Hey, we're going to do a 4 or 6 week series on this." We just finished one on communion, and all of a sudden I had 5 Sundays I could plan around one theme, and that's not typical unless we're talking about Advent or Easter to get to really revolve around one theme for so long and really dissect and be able to take a lot of songs and use them in that way. But as far as that's the organizational side of it and getting the things out there, but we're going to switch over to being prepared once you receive that information. Like if you're on my team, you're getting that information by 12 o'clock on Monday. A lot of people don't look at it until they pull up in the parking lot on Wednesday night for rehearsal, and some may not even look at it then. But your more studious members, especially the musicians, they're going to look at that pretty quickly, and then if they have any questions or need any alternate charts, get that to them as soon as possible. I've gone as far as making videos myself, just recording myself playing something, so someone could have that as a reference. But Rob, what do you do? So you got your plan on let's say you got yours on Monday and rehearsal's Wednesday night, and there's 3 songs on there that's got pretty big lead parts. What's your next step?
A lot of the times, if it's in a key that I can go on YouTube and pull up the song, I will go on YouTube, I'll pull up the song. I've talked about this before. I'll get all my kids in the living room and just tell them we're having a worship night. Well, really, Dad's practicing, but to them, it's all just family worship time. And I'll just run through the songs just over and over again quietly, while they're eating dinner or whatnot. I'll run through them, I'll learn the parts, and then when it's, dinner's over and they're getting ready for bed, they've all brushed their teeth. It's like, well, come on in the living room. We're going to pray. We're going to have family worship time. And I'll just sit there and I'll just play the songs. I'll play through it from beginning to end. I'll play through the whole set list that I have. And then if there's something I need to work on, I'll see if I can find a YouTube tutorial for it. Playing by ear makes things incredibly difficult. I really need to learn music theory and all that stuff. And that'll come with time, but it's a tool, and it's a very, very useful tool. When we get, when I'm in rehearsal, by that time I've already had a couple of days. I know the songs because I don't ever show up to rehearsal and not having at least listened to the songs a couple of times. Sometimes I'll get songs a little bit later, and I won't have time to really work out the parts. And you know what? That's just a part of it. Sometimes when you're a worship musician, you just got to roll with the punches.
That's right.
And the biggest thing that you can do to impact your team when you have that kind of a situation is your attitude. That is like your biggest tool. If you come in with an attitude of, okay, let's do this, let's learn this together, let's work together, let's make this sound as good as we can, it's a lot better than when you come in and you're just like, oh, I didn't get the songs till the last minute, so don't expect much out of me. And that causes division with a team. And whether you have a worship leader that prepares everything in advance, or you have a worship leader that likes to follow the sermon, and that means you're getting the songs a little bit later, the biggest thing and the most important thing is you are there to work and serve that worship leader, that team. You're there to be a part of the team. So you really, as long as you can keep your attitude in check and you can keep your attitude positive, it's going to make a world of difference for the team. And that's one of the things about being prepared, is you have to prepare yourself mentally. You've got to prepare, the posture of your heart, so that you're not getting in there and trying to, show out and things like that. You're there to be a part of a team.
Right. And preparedness boosts confidence. So the more prepared and rehearsed you are, the more confident you're going to be in your part, and the more you can relax and actually worship and not be, a ball of stress trying to worry about one part of one song. It can ruin your whole set. Like you said, it can kind of stick in there like a thorn. Now, I've been in situations before where we had very limited rehearsal time, but I had a high-end team that was very capable. So what we would do on first rehearsal, midweek rehearsal, is not even play really the songs. We would talk about how we're going to start it, how we're going to end it. And it's like, all right, you're playing the lead on that, and you have the rest of the week. You have until Sunday morning to tighten. And even that happens anyways. You practice Wednesday, and there's always things you need to fix and tighten up. But anytime you can, it goes back to being a musician. The habit of rehearsing and practicing. I have a unique advantage of my day job is teaching music. And I work for myself, so I can practice a lot more than most people can. Rob, you typically get off work at 6 p.m. You have a family. It's not always perfect conditions to go home and rehearse for an hour, unless you just wait for everyone to go to sleep. And then if you're an electric guitar player, that's really or a drummer, it might not even be an option. But you can find time. One thing that I do that helps me is I make a playlist on Spotify every week of my songs, and even if they aren't in the same pitch, and I listen when I get in my truck. That's what I listen to. When I have time where I can just listen to music, that's what I listen to. Even if I've known the song 10 years, it's almost like practicing just to have that song rolling, and those songs rolling, and the transitions and the dynamics of it. That's the main thing I like to hear when I'm listening to a song that I know really well, is to remember where the dynamic drops are and the dynamic pickups are. Because like you said in a previous episode about emotion, we're not trying to create some kind of fake emotion, but music is emotional, and
worship is very
is emotional, obviously. But a bad accident in the middle of a song is a lot more detrimental than just a couple of embarrassed musicians. When you're talking about at the end of a sermon, or a time when someone may be really contemplating making a decision, you don't want to, just have something fall
Jazz
apart. That's a lot more worse than just being embarrassed because I didn't know the part.
Mm-hmm. And that's another thing. You're going to make mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes. Don't dwell on them. Don't let that wreck the set. Just forget about it, move on. And that's one of the really difficult things, and that just comes with time. Everybody's fingers get cramped up every now and then, and they're going to hit a wrong note. It's not that big of a deal. Just don't focus on it, because the way I do it, if I make a mistake and I hear it, and I used to be bad about this, I'm not so bad about it anymore, is if I made a mistake, it would trash me for the rest of the Sunday morning, and it was like I can't get past it. And then after years and years and years of doing it, it just become, well, okay, you know what, that was a mistake. It's going to sound really awkward on the live stream when I go back and watch it later, but you know what, Jesus was worship.
Just laugh it off. I make mistakes all the time, and I'm a professional musician and have been, for almost 30 years. make mistakes all the time. Laugh it off. We're human. And I think the human side of us is a part of why we're loved, as Christians and as brothers and sisters and as church leaders. There's no perfection, and I don't even think you should even pretend that you don't have issues like that. But as far as going back to being organized and prepared, as a worship leader, outside of my singers, my musicians, typically the church office wants a copy of the songs because there's maybe a bulletin. There may be a social media post that wants to name the songs. Some churches will even create, of course, usually the worship pastor would be involved in that, but would create a playlist every week on Spotify or somewhere so that anyone could go listen to the songs. And then you have your slides. If that's something that someone does that's a church staff member that might not do it during rehearsal, for the past lot of years, we've built the slides during rehearsal and had our slide person running slides during rehearsal and building too. But sometimes you may have someone that maybe works in the church office who builds the slides. They need not only the names of the songs, they need to know the verse order. They need to know, there's a lot more information than just this is the title and this is the key. So the quicker you can get those things out, of course, everything works with its own team. If you're at a new church, you find out what they're expecting. You find out who your slide person, when they're expecting the information. I recently changed churches, and I was making sure the slide man had the stuff no later than Wednesday afternoon, a hard copy with some notes, only to find out that he didn't come back to the slides till Saturday evening. So it didn't change the way I did anything, but now I didn't have to feel, because I was almost apologetic about waiting till Wednesday to give it to him, and I found out it wasn't a big deal at all because he's waiting till Saturday. So you can find out who wants what. You may have vocalists that have, if you don't do a lot of brand new songs, then that vocalist may not need to practice all week and still be, that you wouldn't know the difference. But the more information you can give to your team, the sooner the better, in my opinion.
And there's really no right and wrong answer to any of this. This is just really us just kind of going around and giving some tips and tricks to make it a little bit easier on you. And the biggest thing that makes it so much easier is being prepared. It's just not only being prepared, but being organized. And not everybody's an organized person. No. So if you have somebody, who's in a leadership position that's not very organized, okay, well, I'm sure that they've got people on their team that are organized. Lean on them a little bit. And like I've said before, everybody in God's church should serve. So I'm sure that there's people that have more of an administrative background than a music background. Well, they're going to be more organized for certain tasks than any musician's going to be. Right. If you've got the people that, and a perfect example of that is slides. Slides are very administrative. It's not very musical. Well, if you've got somebody that's gifted with administration, by all means, tap them, say, hey, would you like to help us out with this? Right. And that just creates another opportunity for somebody to serve.
They still need the information, though.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there are situations I was just thinking back because it's been a long time since I was just a musician, but I was served at a church as a musician one time, and we would show up to rehearsal Wednesday nights, and the copies of the songs would be laying out across the stage, and that's when you found out what you were doing. And but it was kind of a high-end situation where it was okay because we could all just read the music. But that situation, whereas the senior pastor at that church wanted a lot of input into the songs every week, so it was 2 or 3 steps up as why is it's coming so late, so don't always just assume that the person handing it to you is the one who waited to the last minute, if that's happened. And like Rob said, the main point is we're leading worship. My perspective is not having things organized and waiting till the last minute causes me anxiety. And so I learned a long time ago, because I'm not a spring chicken anymore, I learned how to offset my things that trigger anxiety. And one of the things that causes me anxiety is the unknown, things happening, popping up. Mm-hmm. And if I have anxiety, I'm not going to be in a good mindset to worship myself, much less be a worship leader. So it's always worked well for me to have everything off of my plate by Monday as far as the information. And then after midweek rehearsal, really have a relaxing kind of rest of the week where you might only have one or two things you might need to adjust. And most of the time, only thing I need to do between Wednesday and Sunday morning is personal practice. Practice time, yeah.
And a lot of the times what I'll do, because I don't read music, is I'll spend the Wednesday rehearsal, or the Wednesday or Thursday, whichever day we do it. I think we usually typically do it on Thursday. I'll take that rehearsal and I'll listen to the songs and I'll learn the main parts of the parts. Well, a lot of the times what I do is a lot of songs don't have like a set lead part, so it becomes a lot of improvisation.
Right.
So what I'll do is I'll just learn where the beginning of the song is, on what fret, and what shape I need to be using for that, and then I'll just improvise through the whole thing and just have those certain tones that I just want to kind of target. And that's you asked what I do to prepare. That's one of the other things I do is I'll just sit there and noodle around constantly.
Right.
But let's shift gears just a little bit and talk about the difference between practice, rehearsal, and sound check. Now, when you're practicing, to me, practice is what I do on my time. I don't do a practice with the rest of the team learning the part, because by the time I get to that first rehearsal, I should already know the part.
Right.
We've discussed this before, but this is to me, it's just one of the things that absolutely can't be covered enough is learn the part on your own. That's your practice time. Rehearsal is for polishing. Rehearsal is for how are we going to transition from one song to the next. Rehearsal is for how are we going, make sure that being a lead guitar player, make sure my patches are correct beforehand, so that when I get into the rehearsal, all I have to do is hit a button, patch is ready to go. And this is something that I'd actually like to dive into on another episode, is I wanted to talk about the difference between playing a song exactly as it's written, playing it with your own little embellishments, and then just having your own version of a song that only thing is the same as the lyrics. And I think that'd be a great episode for us to talk, to hit on. So if y'all have any thoughts on that, any ideas for that, by all means, please hit us up, leave a comment, leave a message. But the point is that by the time you get to rehearsal is for polishing, it's for tightening up, it's for sound, it's for making sure that the transitions are going to be smooth. And then you have sound check. Sound check is making sure all your levels are good, making sure the gains are set right. Your sound tech is the main driving force behind this. And make sure the reverbs are set, the effects are set, all of that stuff is set. That's sound check. Make sure your levels are correct, make sure you're hearing what you need to in the in-ears. And what's really funny, we were just doing an episode not too long ago about how one of the things that Matt couldn't stand was when people have to sit there and mess with their personal mixers. Well, that Sunday I'm leading worship with Matt's church, and I had a problem with my personal mixer, and Matt's like, come on, we just did an episode on this. Well, what it was everything was coming out of my left ear. I didn't have enough experience on that personal mixer to realize that there was a main setting which was panned all the way to the left. So I'm over here trying to adjust everything else, and it's not doing anything. And Matt just kind of laughed at me and said, we just covered this, Rob.
Right.
So these are things that we deal with here because we deal with this stuff in the real world. And that's really what we're here for, is to help with this kind of stuff.
Right. Well, going back to rehearsal and separating those things, if you are not like gifted by ears like Rob is and like a lot of people are, and you're going to have questions, you can still be prepared by going through the chord sheet and making sure you can look up the chords. You don't have to wait till practice to say, hey, how do you play this chord? You can get that information on your own, and you may still have a lot of questions about like a strum pattern or volume. Do I play here? Because especially let's say you have a second acoustic guitar player. Well, you may not need them to play at all until the second verse, and that's very typical in modern contemporary worship, is to not have very much at all going on until after the first chorus. Those kind of things that's what rehearsal's for. It's not really to learn your specific part, but is to work together as one, where all the specific parts will come together. Another thing I want to point out on rehearsal is being on time. So and I know some people it's just part of their DNA, they can't be on time. But if you are a vocalist, you can get away with being a few minutes late every day. But if you've got to bring in a pedal board and set up 2 guitars and get them tuned and get all that done, then you need to be there however many minutes it takes you to be ready to go. Like, start time should be a start time, not get there time, not show up and chat for 15, 20 minutes. A start time should be a start time because everyone's time is important, and no one person's time is more important than anyone else's. That the same thing goes for Sunday morning rehearsals. Um, in my, it, we rehearse more on Sunday morning as far as what we're going to do. It's Wednesday night, me, is more of a walkthrough. It's kind of, if you've ever been in a play, it's a dress rehearsal. You don't say every line in the play. You just say, okay, here's this scene. I'm wearing this, and this needs to be here. Well, in midweek rehearsal, that's what you should do. Okay, we're starting with this song. All right, here's the transition. Here's these songs. Then there's this part where we can sit down or go down. Talk through all of that with your team. Right now, I have a choir that comes up, a walk-up choir. So we do a song, they come up, we do 3 to 4 more songs, and then they go down, and there's still another 2 songs before the musicians go down for the sermon. So that's a lot of different movement of people. And then during all that, there's different worship elements, like, pass the peace, and then there's announcements and prayer and children's minute. There's all these elements of worship that have to happen besides just the song. And you want things to be seamless and smooth and not distracting. That's the main thing I try to stay away from, is distractions, dead moments where there's nothing going on while you're waiting. If I have someone speaking after a song before church, I'm talking to that person. I'm telling them the song, and I'm telling them when to start moving, because I would rather them be 2 steps from where they're supposed to be at the end of the song, instead of the song in and it's nothing but shuffling around and you're waiting 30 seconds, a minute sometimes for someone to get from where they are to where they're supposed to be. So it's not always just music. As a worship leader, you want to, kind of make everything flow. Flow's a good word.
Absolutely. And I'm really glad that you hit on that, Jameson, because one of the things that's been rattling around in my head that I've been wanting to get out, and this is one, I have a worship leader that I work with that's absolutely phenomenal about this, is in between songs, oftentimes your acoustic guitar player has to change his capo. And one of the worship leaders that I work with is just absolutely phenomenal about being able to just stop and speak and cover that while the acoustic guitar player is changing his capo. I mean, that right there is just a phenomenal example of how preparedness coming from a rehearsal and going into the actual worship service really changes things.
Well, that's part of transitions. And, I have 2, a piano and an organist now who work off sheet music, and most of the songs are multiple pages. So they can't go from one song to the other as quick. I use an iPad with a foot switcher. So I'm, just as fast as I can hit this button, I can be on the next page. So you want to allow that, and figure out, what to do if you need to a capo change, or what I typically try to do, and it doesn't always work, but as a planner, I try to, if we've got 2, I like to do, if we got a capo, if you're going to play an F and you're going to capo 3 and play out a D, then I want the next song to either be in D or F too. Or, so there's not that much I try to plan where people aren't all over the place, and try to keep things in a relative same family of pitches. That's a little bit, above what we were talking about right now, but it goes along with being organized and keeping things flowing and keeping things, even as complex as songs can be, you want to keep things as simple as possible. You want to have to remember the least amount of things as possible while you're up there.
And the next key is preparation, not just preparation, but communication. Communication, communication is absolutely everything. For example, I will pick which guitar I'm playing for a song based on the song. Like, I have guitars that have different voicings. Some of them, I may play a single coil guitar for one song because I want that real ethereal chime, or I'll play my Les Paul when I want to get, down and gritty, or actually I'll bring up my SG when I want to get down and gritty, but when I want to, something in the middle, I'll play my Les Paul. But I'll have, at any time, I don't ever go lead worship with one guitar, because if I pop a string, I'm not B.B. King. I've seen him go and change a string in the middle of a set. I can't do that. So I like to have at least one guitar backup. Well, I'll try to bring a guitar that's a little bit different, so I have the choices between the different voicings of the guitar, different pickup setups, and I'll have a couple of patches loaded into my pedal board, so all I gotta do is hit a button and I'm ready to go to the next song. But most of the time what I do is I don't try to mimic the song or the sound of the song exactly. I have my tone, and my tone, my effects, I have basically one patch that I use for pretty much everything. It's my signature tone, not because, that makes me special, but because it's
easy.
so much simpler that way. So another thing, and that goes back to what I wanted to talk about in a future episode is, you don't have to play everything exactly the way it's recorded all the time.
Right. Well, you shouldn't even. I mean, unless. Well, that's a whole other thing.
No.
But preparedness in your own gear and equipment is something that's a great point, Rob. So, as someone who mostly leads with an acoustic, I keep in my every guitar case I have a capo. I have a 9-volt battery because all my guitars have a 9-volt battery in their pickup system. And then I have an extra pack of strings, but more importantly than that, inspect your instrument before. You don't want to have a iffy string situation. If it's iffy, go ahead and change them, Most of your churches will provide you strings if that's a financial hardship, if you don't financially can't change your strings every 2 or 3 months, talk to your worship leader. I guarantee you they'll be glad to buy you some strings.
Wait a minute, hold on. You're supposed to change strings? I'm kidding.
That's a whole nother book too. All personal choices. Never change bass strings, by the way.
One string.
Yeah.
Well, my acoustic has one elixir, and then the rest of the strings are what came on it because I popped a string.
But I wanted to rebut on another thing you said on communication, because this just happened to me recently. So if you, let's say you're playing acoustic guitar at church ABC, and you haven't gotten a plan, and they send out a plan, well, don't wait until rehearsal night and go, I never got it, because it doesn't no one any good right then. I had this happen to me last week, and it even surpassed the midweek. It waited all the way till Sunday and said, well, I never got that chart. Well, it does absolutely zero good to tell me right now, because we're about to start church. That was, if you know your worship leader sends stuff out on, I'll just use myself. If you haven't got my plan by Monday at noon, you should be contacting me. It's like, hey, I didn't get the plan, and make sure that something didn't happen. Your name didn't get clicked, or things happen, mistakes happen.
And that's just goes down to being a part of a team. I mean, the team, you have what's called leading from the front, and then you have what's called upward leadership, which is when you're not the leader, but you're in a position where you're working for the leader, you're working under the leader, but you have the ability to guide that leader to what you need in a humble and gracious way. Being able to say, hey, this, I didn't get this, or I think this would probably help us a lot better. Or if we do, if we change when we bring things out, like I did with my team at my home church, we changed the way we brought out the songs so that we could get the songs out earlier. And most weeks that's not a problem. Occasionally I still have to gently remind, but that's just part of what I call upward leadership, and I think I got that from John Maxwell or from Zig Ziglar or one of them.
Yeah, it sounds like one of those TM sayings.
Yeah, definitely. But it's important, if you're going to be a team, be on the team. Be on the team to serve. Be on the team to help, because your leader probably needs help. I mean, nobody can do all of this on their own, and I've never met anybody that didn't have just ridiculous amounts of stress in their lives that was able to lead everything on their own and handle everything. As a part of God's church, we have to work together, and we have to try and take that pressure off of our leaders, or if we are the leaders, we need to try and take as much pressure off of our team as we can. We need to make sure our sound techs are taken care of, and all of this leads to our favorite word here, which is burnout.
Right.
Really being prepared and being organized is a tool to alleviate burnout.
Well, the Bible said we're all worship leaders. All of us are commanded to lead worship and to spread the good news. So don't be, if you're in a situation where you've got a couple of band members who are getting compensated and the rest are volunteers, they're not different. They're just being compensated. There shouldn't be a hierarchy of elitism. I was going to say this earlier. If someone has a problem, instead of huffing and puffing and waiting for someone to fix their problem, maybe offer to help. Or offer to distract some of the other folks so it's not such a dilemma. Let's say you popped a string at practice. Well, that's at least a 5-minute issue. It could be longer than that. So instead of letting that be a downer, or your drummer just playing the drums the whole time while you're waiting to do that, find something productive to do. You can go over vocal part. I mean, there's things you can do instead of just shutting down, and definitely not, being kind of, well, this person has a problem, it's not my problem, because problems are everyone's
I was
problem.
about to say, if one person's got a problem, the whole team has a problem, because we're supposed to share each other's burdens. And that goes back to what Matt and I were talking about when we first started this. We were talking about how if one person has a problem, everybody should be chipping in to help that. Everybody should be doing things like, picking up chairs, things like that. We're all servants. And as you were talking about elitism, there is absolutely no difference between serving on a worship team and being the person that scrubs the toilets. We're all servants. That's what we do. Some of us are gifted for other things, but that doesn't mean that's the only place we should be serving. We should be serving the rest of the church community as well. It's really all about having that little spark of Jesus in your heart that says, you know what, I'm going to go help as many people as I can, not because it does anything for me, but because that's what Jesus commanded us to do, is to go be his feet and his hands. And it's also a matter of, that's how you make a team function smoother, is when everybody is working together towards the same goal.
Right. And I feel like as the leader, I feel like I need to have 99% of the answers already. At any given time, I need to have the answers. And I have, there's lots and lots of resources. I've read lots of books about organization. Probably one that helped me the most wasn't a Christian book. Not that it was, a satanic book, but it's by a writer named Tim Ferriss, who's actually, he was a journalist, and now he writes books. But he wrote a book called Tools of Titans. And just to kind of summarize, he spent weeks and weeks with 30 different self-made people. Some of them were professional athletes, entrepreneurs, business people, leaders, and just kind of shadowed them to see how they lived, what time they woke up, what they ate for breakfast, and all these different things. And I picked up a lot of good, replicate success is something I've not been embarrassed to do for years. If you see something that's working and you can do it, and you can implement that and make what you're doing better, there's no shame in that. Just don't try to pass it off as an original idea. But one of the things I picked up from Tools of Titan book about being organized and not letting things pile up on you is, if a task takes 2 minutes or less, do it right then. If you have a task that comes up that takes less than 2 minutes, don't put it off. I used to put off answering emails and some texts and voicemails, and then all of a sudden I would have a day where I would have 2 or 3 hours, and that's all just to reply. When if you take the time, if you have it, now if you work in a factory, working a machine, obviously you don't have the 2 minutes, but in your day-to-day, and in this day and age when everything's in your back pocket on your telephone, and you can reply, even if you can't give a full answer, you can reply and say, hey, I'm going to give this some thought and get back to you later. And that takes a lot of these edges that will pile up on you and start to get heavy when it's just a bunch of yes or no replies.
Yeah, that's absolutely great advice. So really, I think it's about time to wrap this one up. I think we've covered this subject pretty well. And again, if there's anything that you need, just feel free to reach out to us. We're actually hoping to hear from you. We really look forward to getting some feedback. We look forward to some questions, and most importantly, we look forward to hearing from you ways that we can help serve you, ways that we can help you make your job easier, your position or your leadership easier. Excuse me. That's the whole reason that we started this in the first place, was to serve you, to help you in any way that we possibly can. So please don't be afraid to reach out to us. We're here, and we're waiting on hearing from you.
Right. And just one more thing I'd like to add is, don't be afraid to speak to if you're in a worship leader position, talk to your team, find out what their expectations are, because a lot of times you can kill all that bad vibe and all that stuff that we were talking about with just a little communication and see what expectations are. Some people that won't care. Whatever you do, they'll be okay with it. And some people would just be much happier campers if they had something one day sooner than you've been giving it to them, or just something simple like that. Sometimes if you don't ask, you don't know, because everyone won't speak up like me and Rob will.
That's very true. But anyway, it's been great having y'all with us tonight. We sure do appreciate y'all, and please feel free to reach out to us. We look forward to hearing from you. And even if it's an idea for an upcoming episode, we would absolutely love to do a special episode for you for whatever it is that you need. Just all you've got to do is just either check us out on our Facebook or check us out on YouTube and leave a comment for the video, and we'd be more than glad to get back to you and help you in any way we can.
Absolutely.
Y'all
We pray for you.
Yes, absolutely. We definitely, definitely big into prayer. So y'all have a blessed evening. We appreciate y'all.
God bless.